The motion sensor alert lit up Marcus Webb's phone at 12:43 a.m. Through the grainy night vision feed, he watched a woman in designer activewear scale his 6-foot privacy fence with surprising agility. 42 years old, a software engineer who'd spent 18 months designing his dream backyard oasis, Marcus had been dealing with this exact scenario for 6 weeks now. 6 weeks of finding wet towels draped over his custom teak furniture. 6 weeks of discovering his pool chemicals mysteriously depleted. 6 weeks of his German shepherd Bailey barking frantically at midnight disturbances. The police had labeled it a civil matter. His neighbors had suggested he was overreacting, but tonight was different. Tonight, Marcus had upgraded his entire security system, installed additional cameras at every angle, and positioned himself in his upstairs office with a clear view of the entire backyard. And what this entitled trespasser didn't know was that the quiet, software engineer she'd been treating like a doormat had spent his career in cybersecurity, forensics, and he knew exactly how to build an airtight case. Before we dive into how Marcus turned his backyard into a surveillance fortress and caught his midnight swimmer red-handed, if you love stories where entitled people finally face consequences and justice gets served with crystal-clear evidence, hit that like button and subscribe. Trust me, you'll want to see exactly how this played out. This is a story in 3 parts. The violation that pushed a meticulous professional past his breaking point, the confrontation where documented evidence became an inescapable trap, and the resolution where a sense of ownership collided with property rights and lost spectacularly. The first outline takes you through Marcus's mounting frustration as his peaceful sanctuary became someone else's private resort. You'll feel the toll it took on his sleep, his sense of security, and his faith that doing things the right way would actually work. You'll witness his failed attempts to resolve this peacefully, the dismissive responses from authorities, and the moment when something shifted inside him, when he stopped asking for help and started gathering evidence. The breaking point wasn't dramatic. It was quiet, calculated, and absolutely devastating for what came next. The second outline reveals the trap springing shut, the moment Marcus stepped into his own backyard with a spotlight and 18 hours of recorded footage. The instant his midnight visitor realized she'd been caught not once but repeatedly in 4K resolution with timestamps. You'll see the power dynamic shift completely when Marcus revealed exactly who she was, where she lived, and why her husband, a prominent figure in their gated community, might be very interested in her midnight activities. The ultimatum wasn't loud or aggressive. It was precise, documented, and left absolutely no room for denial. The third outline delivers justice with the cold efficiency of compiled evidence. You'll watch as consequences unfolded not through confrontation, but through systematic accountability, community exposure, financial restitution, and the kind of lasting embarrassment that comes from being caught in undeniable wrongdoing. The resolution wasn't just about one trespasser, it sent ripples through an entire neighborhood that had ignored Marcus's concerns for weeks. Marcus Webb had worked remotely as a senior cybersecurity analyst for 12 years, which meant his home was simultaneously his office, his sanctuary, and his primary investment. At 42, divorced for 3 years, he'd poured his settlement and savings into a modest 4-bedroom house in the Riverside Estates gated community just outside Charlotte. The backyard had been his passion project. A saltwater pool with color-changing LED lights, a built-in hot tub, custom landscaping with Japanese maples, and a covered patio area complete with an outdoor kitchen. He'd spent 18 months transforming a boring rectangular yard into something that felt like a private resort. It was his retreat after long days staring at code and security protocols. His 70-pound German shepherd Bailey had the run of the space during the day, and Marcus often worked poolside with his laptop, finding the sound of the water filter oddly soothing for concentration. The first incident happened on a Tuesday night in mid-September. Marcus had been troubleshooting a security breach for a client until nearly 2 in the morning. When he finally shut down his laptop and headed to bed, Bailey was pacing by the back door, whining softly. Marcus let her out, expecting the usual perimeter check, but instead Bailey bolted to the pool area, barking furiously at the fence line. Marcus followed, barefoot on the cool deck stones, and immediately noticed something wrong. One of his expensive Turkish cotton towels, the ones he kept in the outdoor storage bench, was draped over a lounge chair, soaking wet. The pool gate, which he always kept latched, stood open. Chlorine and wet footprints led across the deck to the fence. His first thought was teenagers, maybe from the neighboring street. The community had seen some minor vandalism that summer. He checked the pool chemical levels the next morning and found them normal, so he chalked it up to a one-time prank. He reinforced the gate latch and made a mental note to be more vigilant. 3 weeks later, it happened again. This time, Marcus was actually home, working late in his upstairs office, when Bailey started her frantic barking around 11:30 at night. By the time he got downstairs and into the backyard, whoever had been there was gone. But the evidence was unmistakable. 2 wet towels, an empty wine bottle on the patio table, and the distinct smell of expensive perfume lingering in the humid night air. The pool water was disturbed, still rippling. His outdoor Bluetooth speaker had been moved and was still connected to a device he didn't recognize. This wasn't teenagers. This was someone treating his property like a personal spa. Marcus felt something cold settle in his chest. Not fear, but the specific kind of anger that comes from having your space violated by someone who clearly didn't see it as wrong. He went to his security camera app, only to discover his one backyard camera had been mysteriously repositioned, now pointing directly at the fence instead of the pool. Someone had physically moved it. The breaking point came on a Friday night in early October. Marcus had been in bed for less than an hour when Bailey's barking jolted him awake. This time he grabbed his phone, turned on his flashlight, and moved quickly. He reached the back door in time to see a figure, definitely female, definitely adult, pulling herself over his fence near the back corner where the property line met a dense row of privacy hedges. By the time he got outside, she was gone, but she'd left behind more than evidence this time. She'd left an entire scene, a designer gym bag with monogrammed initials LT poolside, containing an expensive water bottle, high-end goggles, and a luxury spa robe. One of his pool loungers had been dragged to the shallow end, positioned perfectly for someone to recline half-submerged. His pool vacuum, which he'd left charging, had been unplugged and moved. Marcus stood there in his pajama pants and t-shirt, his phone flashlight illuminating what was essentially someone's personal midnight swim setup, and something inside him snapped, not into rage but into cold calculation. This person felt entitled to his property. They felt comfortable enough to leave belongings behind, confident they could return. And that confidence, Marcus realized, came from knowing they'd faced zero consequences. The police response the next morning was exactly what Marcus had feared. The officer, a tired-looking man in his 50s, filled out a report but offered little hope. It's technically trespassing, but without catching them in the act or having clear video identification, there's not much we can do. This is really more of a civil matter. You might want to install better cameras. Marcus had explained about his repositioned camera, the repeated incidents, the abandoned gym bag. The officer had shrugged. Could be neighborhood kids. Could be someone who has you confused with a friend's house. File a complaint with your HOA. Get better security. Lock your gates better. The subtext was clear. This wasn't a priority. Marcus was on his own. He'd tried one direct approach, posting a polite but firm note on the community Facebook page. To whoever has been using my pool at 428 Riverside Drive without permission, this is private property. You are trespassing. Please stop immediately or I will take legal action. The responses had been worse than the police indifference. Several neighbors suggested he was being unwelcoming. One woman commented that community means sharing. Another implied he was paranoid. The general consensus seemed to be that he should feel flattered someone found his pool so appealing. No one took it seriously. No one offered information. And Marcus realized that in this particular community, where everyone smiled and waved but no one actually intervened in anyone else's business, he was going to have to handle this himself. That weekend, Marcus stopped expecting help and started building his case. He ordered 4 additional security cameras, all with 4K night vision and motion-triggered recording. He installed them himself, positioning them at angles that covered every inch of his backyard and both fence lines. He set up a dedicated server in his office to store footage with redundant backups. He changed his Wi-Fi password to something impossible to guess and put all cameras on a separate network that couldn't be accessed without physical access to his router. Then he waited. He went to bed each night with his phone volume turned up, the security app configured to send immediate alerts for any motion in his backyard after 10 p.m. He was no longer trying to scare anyone off. He was documenting everything. And on October 18th at exactly 12:43 a.m., his phone lit up with an alert, and Marcus smiled for the first time in weeks. Everything was finally ready. Marcus watched his phone screen as the woman cleared his fence with practiced ease, landing softly on the grass before walking directly to his pool. She moved with the confidence of someone who'd done this many times before, pulling off her jacket to reveal a one-piece swimsuit underneath. She didn't rush. She didn't look around nervously. She walked to the pool edge, tested the water temperature with her toe, and slipped in with barely a splash. From his office window, Marcus could see her clearly now in the pool's LED glow. Late 30s or early 40s, athletic build, highlighted blonde hair pinned up. She began swimming lazy laps completely at ease. Marcus gave her exactly 10 minutes. He wanted her comfortable, settled, fully committed to being in his pool. Then he stood, pulled on a jacket over his t-shirt, grabbed a high-powered flashlight and his phone, and walked calmly downstairs and out the back door. He flipped on every outdoor light simultaneously. The pool lights, patio lights, landscape lighting, everything. The backyard transformed from dim ambiance to blazing visibility in an instant. The woman in his pool gasped, spinning in the water to face him. Marcus stood at the pool edge, flashlight pointed at the ground, phone in his other hand very visibly recording. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. "Good evening," he said calmly. "I'm Marcus Webb. This is my pool. You're trespassing on my property and you've been doing it for 6 weeks. I have you on camera from 4 different angles right now and from at least 8 previous incidents. I need you to exit my pool immediately and come sit at that patio table. Because we're going to have a conversation you should have initiated a long time ago." The woman's face went through several expressions in rapid succession: shock, embarrassment, defensive anger. She opened her mouth to speak, probably to make an excuse or deny something, but Marcus held up one hand. "Before you say anything, I need you to understand something. I don't know who you are yet, but I will within the next 60 seconds. I have clear footage of your face. I have your gym bag with your initials. I have your license plate from when you parked down the street. And I have 6 weeks of documented evidence of repeated criminal trespassing. So please, get out of my pool. Put on that robe you left on my chair and come sit down. Because you have a choice to make tonight, and your next words really matter." The woman climbed out, and Marcus noticed her hands were shaking as she reached for the robe. She was scared now, the confidence completely gone. She walked to the patio table and sat, arms crossed defensively. Marcus sat across from her, his phone still very obviously recording between them. "Let me tell you what I know," Marcus said, his tone conversational but cold. "Your initials are LT. You drive a white Mercedes GLE that you park 3 streets over. You enter my property between midnight and 1 a.m., usually on weeknights. You swim for 30 to 45 minutes. You've used my towels, my furniture, my pool chemicals, and my electricity. You've moved my security camera, unplugged my equipment, and left your belongings here overnight at least twice, returning the next evening to retrieve them. You've ignored a community post asking whoever was doing this to stop. And based on your comfort level and the designer swim gear, I'm guessing you live in this community and your own home either doesn't have a pool or someone there would notice your midnight swimming habit. Does that sound accurate so far?" The woman's face had gone pale. She started to speak, stopped, then finally managed, "Look, I'm sorry, Your name is Linda Thornton," Marcus continued, and he watched her eyes widen. He held up his phone, showing her a screenshot from the community directory. "You live at 612 Maple Ridge, 4 streets over. You're married to David Thornton, who works as a senior partner at Thornton and Associates law firm downtown. You have 2 teenagers. Your HOA profile lists you as the treasurer for the Riverside Estates Community Board, and you've been using my pool as your personal midnight spa for a month and a half." Linda's mouth opened and closed. "How did you—" "I'm a cybersecurity analyst," Marcus said flatly. "Finding information is literally what I do for a living. Your gym bag has your initials. Your car has a Riverside Estates parking sticker. The community directory has photos. It took me 20 minutes. What I want to know is why you thought you could just keep doing this." Linda's defensive posture crumbled. She looked down at the table. "My husband," she said quietly. "He works until midnight most nights. The kids have their own lives. I needed something for myself. Your pool is beautiful and you're never out here at night, and I thought—" "You thought what?" Marcus interrupted. "That because I'm not using my pool at midnight, you're entitled to it? That my property is community property? I posted asking whoever was doing this to stop. The police told me to handle it myself. My neighbor suggested I was overreacting. So here we are, Linda. Here's your choice." Marcus leaned forward, his voice dropping but hardening. "Option 1, I call the police right now. I have you on video, in my pool, on my property, right this moment. That's criminal trespassing. I have footage of at least 8 previous incidents. That's evidence of a pattern. I have documentation of property damage. You've cost me approximately $400 in replaced towels, extra chemicals, and increased utility bills. I file charges. I file a civil suit for damages. I submit everything to the HOA board, of which you're an officer. I post the security footage to the community page. Your husband finds out. Your kids find out. Your reputation in this community evaporates." Linda had gone completely white. "Please," she whispered. "Or option 2, Marcus continued. You write me a check tonight for $1,000. That covers my actual damages plus installation of the security system I needed because of you. You provide a written, signed confession stating you trespassed repeatedly on my property, which I'll keep as insurance. You resign from the HOA board within 48 hours, citing personal reasons. You never come near my property again. You don't contact me. You don't discuss this with anyone. And in return, I don't file charges, don't sue you, don't post footage, and don't tell your husband why you're suddenly writing me a 4-figure check. But understand this, if I ever see you near my fence, if I ever hear you've discussed me negatively in the community, if I even suspect you're causing me problems, every piece of footage goes public and I file everything I've held back. Are we clear?" Linda was crying now, quiet tears streaming down her face. "I don't have my checkbook," she managed. "Then you'll write it tomorrow and bring it to me before 6 p.m., Marcus said, along with your written confession. I'll provide you with the exact wording. You'll also delete any photos you may have taken in my backyard from your phone and social media. And Linda?" He waited until she looked up at him. "I'm being generous here. I could ruin your entire life tonight with 3 phone calls. I'm giving you a chance to make this right quietly. Don't mistake kindness for weakness. Linda nodded, wiping her eyes. Tomorrow. 6 p.m. I'll have everything. Good, Marcus said. He stood, still recording. You can leave the same way you came in. Your gym bag stays here until tomorrow as collateral. I'll walk you to the fence. He followed her to the back corner of his yard, watching as she scaled the fence with far less grace than she'd entered with. When she disappeared over the top, Marcus stood there for a moment, looking at his pool, his cameras, his carefully built case. Then he walked back inside, uploaded the footage to his secure server, and smiled for the first time in 6 weeks. Tomorrow, this would finally be over. Linda Thornton arrived at Marcus's front door at 5:47 p.m. the following day, 13 minutes early. She looked exhausted, eyes red-rimmed behind expensive sunglasses, dressed in a conservative blouse and jeans as if trying to appear as unthreatening as possible. Marcus answered the door but didn't invite her in. He simply held out his hand for the envelope she was clutching. Inside was a check for $1,000 made out to Marcus Webb, dated that day, signed in shaky handwriting. Beneath it was a single page of printed text, the confession Marcus had emailed her that morning, now signed and dated at the bottom. I, Linda Thornton, admit to repeatedly trespassing on the property at 428 Riverside Drive between September 15th and October 18th. I used the pool and facilities without permission on at least 10 occasions. I moved security equipment to avoid detection. I have caused approximately $400 in damages and inconvenience to the property owner, Marcus Webb. I take full responsibility for my actions and will not contact Mr. Webb or enter his property again for any reason. I understand that Mr. Webb has security footage of these incidents and is within his rights to pursue legal action if I violate these terms. Marcus read it twice, nodded, and folded it into his pocket. Your gym bag, he said, retrieving it from behind the door. I've documented the contents. Everything is still inside. Linda took the bag without meeting his eyes. I resigned from the HOA board this afternoon, she said quietly. Told them I needed to focus on family. They were surprised. I'm sure they were, Marcus said neutrally. One more thing. I need to see your phone. Linda's head snapped up. What? You posted photos from my backyard on Instagram, Marcus said. It wasn't a question. He'd found them that afternoon, 3 posts over the past month, carefully angled shots of a peaceful late-night swim with strategic cropping to hide identifying features of his property. The captions were vague, but the hashtags told the story. Shark midnight swim, me time, Sack stolen moments, living my best life. Delete them, now, in front of me. Linda's hands shook as she pulled out her phone and opened the app. Marcus watched as she deleted all 3 posts, then made her show him the recently deleted folder and permanently removed them from there too. Cloud backup? He asked. Google Photos, she admitted. She opened that app and deleted the images again, then showed him the confirmation. Marcus nodded. If those images resurface anywhere, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, anywhere, our agreement is void and everything goes public. Understood. Understood, Linda whispered. Then we're done here, Marcus said. I don't want to see you again, Linda. Not at community events, not at the grocery store, nowhere. If you see me coming, you turn around. Are we clear? She nodded and walked quickly back to her car, the white Mercedes he'd identified from security footage. Marcus watched her drive away, then went back inside and deposited the check with his banking app immediately. The confession went into a fireproof safe in his home office, scanned and backed up in 3 separate locations. But the story didn't end quietly. 2 weeks later, Marcus was collecting his mail when his neighbor, Patricia Chen, a retired teacher who lived 2 houses down, approached him with a knowing smile. "I heard Linda Thornton resigned from the board," Patricia said casually, rather suddenly. "And I haven't seen her at the last 2 community meetings. Everything okay between you two?" Marcus kept his expression neutral. "I wouldn't know. We're not friends." Patricia's smile widened slightly. "Funny thing, my Ring camera faces the street. I noticed someone walking past our houses quite regularly around midnight for a while there. Late September, early October. Always the same person, same direction. Then it just stopped. Right around the time you upgraded your security system. The one with all those new cameras in your backyard." Marcus met her eyes and saw understanding there. Patricia was sharper than most people gave her credit for. "Sometimes good security prevents problems before they escalate," he said carefully. "Indeed it does," Patricia agreed. "And sometimes the right solution to a problem is one that stays private. I appreciate neighbors who handle things quietly and effectively. Makes for a better community." She patted his arm and walked back to her house, leaving Marcus with the distinct impression that at least one person in Riverside Estates understood exactly what had happened and approved. The real complication came 3 weeks after the confrontation. Marcus was working in his office when his doorbell rang. On his security monitor was a man in his 50s, well-dressed in business casual, standing on his porch with the posture of someone used to authority. Marcus answered the door cautiously. "Marcus Webb?" the man asked, extending his hand. "David Thornton. I believe you know my wife." Marcus's stomach dropped, but he kept his face neutral and shook the offered hand. "Mr. Thornton, what can I do for you?" David's expression was difficult to read. "May I come in? I think we should talk." They sat in Marcus's living room, an awkward silence settling between them. Finally, David spoke. "I'm going to be direct," he said. "My wife wrote you a check for $1,000 3 weeks ago. She resigned from a board position she was passionate about. She's been different, withdrawn. She won't tell me why, but she's terrified of something, and you're the only recent change in her routine that I can identify. So I need to know what happened." Marcus weighed his options. He could deny everything, but this was a lawyer, and a smart one. He could produce the confession, but that felt like escalation. Instead, he chose something in between. "Your wife made some poor choices that affected my property," Marcus said carefully. "We resolved it privately. She compensated me for damages. That's the entirety of the situation." David studied him for a long moment. Did she do something illegal? Something flickered across David's face. Understanding, maybe, or resignation. "She trespassed," he said quietly. It wasn't a question. Marcus said nothing, which was answer enough. David closed his eyes briefly. "The pool. She used your pool without permission. Mr. Thornton, I'm not going to discuss specifics of my agreement with your wife, but I will tell you this. What happened is over. No one was harmed. No charges were filed. Property was compensated. If your wife chooses to tell you more, that's her decision. But from my end, this conversation is where it stops." David stood, looking older than when he'd arrived. "She has been distant lately. Working late, or so I thought. I should have paid more attention." He met Marcus's eyes. "Thank you for handling this discreetly. And for whatever it's worth, I'm sorry. If she damaged your property or caused you stress, I apologize on her behalf." "Apology accepted," Marcus said, standing as well. "For what it's worth, Mr. Thornton, she seemed genuinely remorseful. People make mistakes. She's paying for hers." After David left, Marcus stood at his window and watched the lawyer's car disappear down the street. He felt an unexpected pang of sympathy for the man, coming home to a wife keeping secrets, trying to piece together what had happened. But that sympathy only extended so far. Linda had made her choices repeatedly, night after night, treating his property like it existed for her convenience. She'd earned every ounce of her current discomfort. 2 months later, on a crisp December evening, Marcus sat on his covered patio with a bourbon and his laptop, Bailey sleeping peacefully at his feet. His pool reflected the string lights he'd added for the holidays, the water perfectly still and undisturbed. He'd been monitoring his security cameras religiously for weeks after the confrontation, but there'd been no incidents, no attempted returns, no suspicious activity. Linda Thornton had kept her word completely. He'd seen her exactly once in those 2 months, driving past his street with her head turned deliberately away, refusing to even glance in the direction of his house. His neighbor Patricia had mentioned at a recent HOA meeting that Linda had joined a gym. Finally taking some time for herself, Patricia had said with a pointed look at Marcus. Funny how people find appropriate outlets when they need them. Marcus had simply nodded and changed the subject. The confessions stayed in his safe, insurance against a future problem that seemed increasingly unlikely. The footage remained backed up in 3 locations, and Marcus's property remained exactly what it was supposed to be, his own private sanctuary, protected and peaceful. He took a sip of bourbon and watched Bailey's ears twitch in her sleep. The German Shepherd had stopped her midnight alert barking weeks ago, settling back into her relaxed routine. Marcus's own sleep had improved dramatically. The constant low-level stress of being violated repeatedly had lifted, replaced by the satisfaction of having handled a problem completely on his own terms. Marcus had learned something important through this entire situation. Justice doesn't always come through official channels. Sometimes it doesn't come from police reports or HOA complaints or community support. Sometimes justice comes from refusing to be a victim, from building an airtight case, and from offering someone a choice between private consequences they can manage and public humiliation they can't recover from. He'd given Linda an out that preserved her dignity while ensuring she faced real accountability. That was more than fair. That was generous, actually. Given that he could have destroyed her reputation and family relationships with a single social media post. As Marcus sat there in the peace he'd fought to reclaim, watching his pool lights dance on the water and feeling the cool December breeze, he smiled. Because justice, whether delivered hot through immediate confrontation or cold through calculated consequences, was equally satisfying when it was finally, completely served. Across the country in Phoenix, Arizona, military veteran and ER nurse Rachel Diaz was finishing her night shift when she got a ring alert from her home camera. A woman in yoga pants was walking her 2 unleashed pit bulls directly into Rachel's front yard, where Rachel's elderly therapy-certified Labrador was sunbathing behind a clearly marked fence. The woman's voice came through the speaker. "Your dog is making mine anxious. You need to bring him inside." Rachel pulled up the woman's previous visits on her camera timeline. 7 incidents in 2 weeks, always with the same entitled demand. She smiled, the same calm smile she wore in the ER before handling difficult patients, and texted back a single response. "I'm a veterinary advocate with animal control on speed dial. I know Arizona leash laws by heart, and your dogs are about to become a documented liability. Want to try that again?" The woman's face went pale on camera as she read the text, but that's a story for another time.